I mean, what more can be said about what was one of the greatest playoff performances in sports history? Shohei Ohtani set numerous records. First player ever with 3 homers at the plate, 10 strikeouts on the mound, and with all due respect to Reggie and Albert and Pablo Sandoval, guys that have had 3-homer games, you've watched everything he's done in a Dodger uniform for the last 2 years. How do you wrap your head around this? How do you quantify what he did?
You can't. He's a standalone. I mean, it's truly remarkable what he does on both sides of the baseball.
3 homers and 10 strikeouts in one postseason night. That isn't a stat line, it's a warning siren. Because when a single player can hijack the laws of baseball like that, every argument about greatness collapses in real time. And here's the part people can't handle. This wasn't some hot streak. This was a full takeover on the mound and at the plate when the season was hanging by a thread. So the question isn't what Shohei Ohtani did. The question is, what do you do with a player who makes numbers feel useless? And to understand why this shook the sport, let's rewind to the exact night the impossible became official. This is where language fails. Because baseball has seen legends. It's seen October monsters. But it almost never sees a player do everything and then do it when elimination pressure is at its most vicious. Ohtani didn't just win a game. He detonated the conversation. 3 home runs, 10 strikeouts, scoreless into the late innings. A postseason clincher that felt less like a win and more like a public demonstration of power. And it wasn't cheap either. One of those shots was measured at 469 feet, the kind of blast that makes a stadium sound like it's cracking. Another left the bat at 116.9 miles per hour. That's not strong. That's violent. And added up, those 3 homers traveled 1,342 feet combined, over a quarter of a mile of pure punishment, while he's also dealing on the mound. People asked, how do you quantify it? You don't. You just admit what everyone was thinking but scared to say. This might be the greatest single postseason performance baseball has ever witnessed. But what makes this story even heavier is what happened when the lights were off the highlight reel. Because the next chapter isn't about power, it's about pressure. Fast forward to July 2025. Different stage, different tension. Milwaukee, a hyped matchup. A rookie flamethrower, everyone's calling a problem. Ohtani steps in, gets buried 0-2, and then does that thing he does. He refuses panic. Next pitch, he launches it 431 feet to dead center, a leadoff blast that punches the air right out of the building. And that homer wasn't just another tally, it was his 31st of the season, setting a new Dodgers franchise mark for most before the All-Star break. So you'd think, here we go, Dodgers statement game. No, because that rookie, he doesn't melt. He snaps back with 12 strikeouts in 6 innings. The Dodgers strike out 15 times. Final score, 3-1. And suddenly the story gets uncomfortable. During that skid, the Dodgers were outscored 41-8 across 5 games like something was rotting in the engine, while the superstar tried to drag it forward with one swing. This is the part fans don't always want to hear. Greatness doesn't erase crisis. Sometimes it just exposes it more clearly. And right when that tension should have turned him cold, Ohtani did something that made people emotional for a completely different reason. There's a reason people cried over a moment that lasted less than a commercial break. A foul ball comes screaming into the dugout fast enough that most people don't even process it. Everyone ducks, everyone panics. And then, the bat boy Javier Herrera snatches it barehanded. Clean, calm. Like he'd been waiting his whole life for exactly that second. Here's what makes it hit harder. Ohtani is the $700 million face of the franchise. That ball wasn't just heading toward a player, people saw it as a nightmare, flying at the sport's biggest investment. And what does Ohtani do afterward? He doesn't act like a king who was saved. He shows gratitude publicly, calling the bat boy my hero. That's why this goes viral. Because it's the opposite of arrogance. It's proof that, even at the top of the world, he still sees the people behind the scenes as real teammates, not furniture. But if you think kindness is easy when the crowd loves you, wait until you see what he did to a heckler who tried to tear him down in real time. This is where the story turns into a moral test. San Diego, hostile noise. A fan near the Dodgers dugout, chirping all game relentless. Ohtani is 0 for 10 inches the series before the moment happens. That's the setup hecklers live for. Then the ninth inning arrives and Ohtani crushes home run number 45, a 409 foot shot that seals an 8-2 win. And instead of glaring, instead of shouting, instead of turning into what the internet begs athletes to become, he walks straight to the guy who's been barking all day and high-fives him. Even pats him like, all good. You could actually feel the heckler's confidence collapse, like the wind got knocked out of his ego. Because what do you do when the person you tried to break offers you connection instead? That's not weakness. That's dominance with discipline. But now comes the controversial part, because not everyone believes this is real. Some people say it's an act, so let's go there. Here's the argument that divides fans at the bar and lights up comment sections like gasoline. One side says, come on, that's brand building. That's image control. That's manufactured. The other side fires back. If you think basic respect is fake, maybe that says more about you than it does about him. And the truth. The truth is heavier because Ohtani doesn't just talk humble. He structured his own money like someone who cares about the team winning more than his own luxury. A 10-year, $700 million contract. But only $2 million per year during the playing years, then the rest later. That's not a normal superstar move. That's a build the roster around me move. So if you want to call it PR, fine then, explain why he chose the one approach that gives him less immediate power and more scrutiny. And if you really want to understand why this hits so hard, especially in Japan, look at what happens when Ohtani touches a kid's life for real. A 10-year old boy in Tokyo catches Ohtani's home run ball and holds it like it's made of glass. Because to a kid, that isn't leather and stitches. That's a memory you carry into adulthood. That's the story you tell forever. And in Japan, these moments land different because baseball isn't just sport there. It's discipline, respect, community, the little rules that hold people together. That's why the World Baseball Classic in 2023 didn't just draw viewers, it drew the nation. One Japan game against Italy pulled a staggering 48% of households on TV. So when Ohtani shows humility, when he treats staff, kids, and even hecklers like human beings, people don't see it as cute. They see it as a standard. And that brings us to the real danger, because the modern sports world isn't built for standards like that. It's built to break people. We're watching a sports culture that's fraying at the edges. Fans don't just cheer, they hunt. Media doesn't just report, it provokes. Money doesn't just reward, it corrupts. And the loudest voices don't want greatness. They want collapse. They want the superstar to snap, to embarrass himself, to become a meme. And that's why Ohtani is so dangerous to the cynics. Because he refuses to degrade. He refuses to perform ugliness just because ugliness gets clicks. He can dominate you with a 4, 6, 9-foot blast, and then disarm you with a high five. That combination power plus restraint makes people emotional, because it's rare. It reminds fans what sports could be, in a world that keeps trying to drag it downward. So now the final question. What do we do with a superstar who doesn't just win games, but changes the temperature of the whole stadium? Let's be honest, most stars don't survive the machine. The money gets loud. The ego gets louder. And the fans? They don't just watch you anymore. They consume you. They wait for one crack in your armor so they can call you a fraud. But what do you do with a man who doesn't crack? Because this is the part people keep skipping. Ohtani didn't just deliver a stat line that sounds like a myth, 3 homers at the plate and 10 strikeouts on the mound. He did it while carrying a price tag so massive it should have poisoned his personality, around $700 million. And yet, the moment the cameras shouldn't matter, the moment nobody would blame him for being cold, locked in, untouchable, he stops, he turns, and he acknowledges the person nobody talks about. A ball boy, a kid, a worker behind the scenes, even a heckler who spent the whole night trying to tear him down. And that's why this story hits harder than any highlight reel. Because power is common in professional sports. What's rare is power with restraint. What's rare is greatness that doesn't humiliate people, greatness that actually lifts them. Now, here's the controversial question people don't want to answer. If you saw Ohtani and thought, "That's fake, just PR, why?" Is it because you truly believe kindness can't be real at that level? Or is it because we've gotten so used to watching athletes collapse that we can't recognize someone who refuses to? Because that's the uncomfortable truth. A lot of modern sports culture is addicted to degradation. We don't just celebrate stars, we test them. We poke them. We heckle them. We push until they snap, and then we pretend we were just having fun. And Ohtani? He doesn't snap. He doesn't bite. He doesn't give the internet what it wants. He gives the game what it's been starving for: dignity. So here's what I want from you: no polite answers, no safe takes. Is this the greatest kind of superstar, or is it all an act? And if it is real, what does that say about the rest of the league? What does it say about the way we treat players and the way we treat each other? Drop your take in the comments. I'm pinning the most brutal, most honest argument. And if you want the next story where Ohtani's greatness sparks a conflict the league can't hide, hit subscribe, because the next chapter is even more explosive.